Good afternoon to all of you. This CSR Secretary Sikyasa connect with
Good
scientists.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Okay, good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, sir.
Please mute your video and audio. Then we will
Good
understand
afternoon,
very
sir.
easily. Yeah, good afternoon. So this 11th talk by Dr. V. Ganesh. Dr. V. Ganesh is currently working as a principal scientist at CSR Sikri Central Electrochemical Research Institute, Karikudi. He has completed his undergraduate degree in chemistry from Ayyanadar Janaki College, Sivagasi, Tamil Nadu, and he received a gold medal for securing the first place in the percentage of 91.5%. In addition, he also received gold medals for Tamil and English for securing the first place in the degree. He did his master degree from the American College, Madurai. Similar to BSc, he also received the gold medals for securing the first place in MSc as well. After completing his master degree, he went to Raman Research Institute, Bangalore. It was created by Sir C.V. Raman to pursue a PhD degree in chemistry under the guidance of Professor V. Lakshmi Narayanan. Basically, he worked on the subject of electrochemistry and surface chemistry. He completed his PhD degree in the year 2006. And then we moved to UK to do a postdoctoral research at University of Edinburgh in Scotland, United Kingdom. He worked with Professor Juan C. Marcu Rivas for a period of 3 years, where his research work is mainly focused on biosensor, bioelectrochemistry, bioelectrocatalysis, and bioinorganic chemistry. Then he come back to India and take up a position of scientist at CSR Sikri, where he is working since 2009. Meanwhile, Dr. Ganesh also went to Canada to avail a visiting research fellowship to carry out research work at University of Manitoba, Winnipeg, Canada for a period of 6 months, where he worked on the area of nanomaterials for electrocatalysis, liquid crystals, and electrochemistry, with applications primarily focused on biology and catalysis. Overall, he has about nearly 100 publications in internationally reputed journals and contributed 2 book chapters. He is a recipient of prestigious CSR Young Scientist Award in Chemical Sciences for the year 2014. This year also we have received a Young Scientist Award, one of his colleague Dr. K. Kiribabu, and Pudhiya Thalaimurai Nambikai Natchatram Award for Science and Technology for the year 2015. In addition to SAEST Golden Jubilee Young Scientist Award for the year 2015. He has delivered many invited lectures across India and in other countries like Japan, Canada, and UK. He has completed 9 sponsored projects and currently possesses 4 sponsored projects. Moreover, he also has a teaching experience of about more than 10 years. His research interests mainly include electron transfer studies, electrocatalysis, self-assembled monolayers, microfuel fuel cells, scanning probe microscopy, catalysis, electro-analytical chemistry, nanomaterials, liquid crystals, biosensor and bioenergy, and graphene-based materials for biosensing, catalytic and supercapacitor applications. With this brief introduction, now I invite Dr. V. Ganesh for his talk. Sir, please.
Thank you, sir, for your elaborative introduction. Thank you very much for your kind words. So, good afternoon to all of you. My voice is audible. Am I clear?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon. Okay. At the outset, I would like to thank our director, Dr. N. Kalaiselvi ma'am, for providing me an opportunity to deliver this lecture and share with you my experience in the field of energy harvesting. I would like to thank Dr. S. Angappan, GKSA coordinator from CSIR Sikri side, again for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge with you guys. Okay. I know it is
Sir,
very
you are not
difficult.
audible, sir.
I'm not audible. How about others? Am I audible?
Sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, okay. I think probably the person who said I am not audible.
Your audio system. Okay.
May just please check your audio system. Okay. So I know it is very difficult to listen to talk, especially science related or talks after lunch. And I would like to say it is not only from the listening point of view, even delivering lecture after lunch would be also very difficult, right? So what I will do in that way is I will tell you many scientific concepts through stories and
Sir, you are not audible.
Inaugurate this, I will send. Okay.
Yes,
Just
sir.
now
are my
I will send.
You are not audible, sir.
I'm not audible. Are my slides visible in the beginning?
No, sir.
Now you are audible. Sir, now you are audible.
I am audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Now I am audible and my slides are also visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. I know there is a small, internet connectivity problem would occur now and then. If you guys don't see anything or I am not audible to you guys, please tell me that. Okay. Then only I can continue my talk. Okay.
No, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, no issue. Yeah. So today, what we will discuss is, we will discuss about how do you harvest energy from unconventional sources, and through this idea, what are the novel and peculiar scientific concepts one can learn. Okay. So normally what I do is, before I start giving my lecture, I used to talk about where do I come from, and I used to tell a small story because you guys, how many of you guys know about Karaikudi? Do you guys have heard about this name before?
No, sir.
Karaikudi?
No, sir.
No.
No,
Yeah, so
sir.
Karaikudi, yes, for those of you who doesn't know about Karaikudi, I will tell you about this. Okay, so Karaikudi is a very small town that is located near Madurai. Okay, Madurai is a famous place. Probably you guys would have heard about the Meenakshi Amman temple. It was one of the World Heritage proposed, right? So it is very near to Madurai. It is a small local town. One day I went for a haircut, at Karaikudi, and the barber asked me, "Sir, where do you work?" I said, "I work in Sikri." Then immediately that person asked me, "Do you guys make atom bomb?" Okay. That person asked me that, in a very spontaneous manner, that do you guys make atom bomb? I was very surprised, and I asked him, again in a very local Tamil language, that how many years you are here in Karaikudi? And he replied that he is there in Karaikudi for about 2 decades, for about 20 years or so. Okay. Then I realized at that moment, a person who lives in Karaikudi itself do not know about what Sikri is all about. Then how can I expect a person who is listening from me, let's say across India, to know what Sikri is all about? Okay. So from that moment onwards, I decided wherever I go and whatever the lecture I give, initially I will talk about our own institute and where do I come from. Okay. So our institute is essentially a research institute. It is a Central Electrochemical Research Institute, profoundly known as SICRI. and it is one of the constituent laboratory of CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. Okay, the headquarters is located at Karaikudi, and we do have two different subunits, one at Chennai and the other one is at Mandapa. Okay, so we are roughly about 300 employees, out of which 1/3 are scientists, and we do have 6 different major divisions. Okay, so we cover all the aspects of electrochemical science and technology, starting from looking at the fundamental aspects to material design. And once you understand these concepts, we would explore further for instrument and device fabrication for target functional applications. So in a way, what we work on is a kind of multidisciplinary research approach to come up with instrument and devices and many fundamental concepts. Okay. Apart from this, we do have a unique BTech course, which is BTech in chemical and electrochemical engineering. Okay, I can very happy to I can very well happily say that this is one of the unique course that comes under Anna University Chennai, and SICRI alone provides this course, like BTech in chemical and electrochemical engineering. If you look at the history behind the establishment of institute like SICRI, the foundation stone was laid in the year 1948 by then Prime Minister Sri Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru ji, and it was declared open in the year 1953 by then President Sri Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. Okay, and the person who is standing next to him on the right is Dr. Bhatnagar. Thanks to him, because thanks to him, CSIR is established in the year 1940s itself, as early as even before the independence. And the person who is speaking in between the two, okay, the person who is standing in the middle is none other than Dr. R.M. Alagappa Chettiar. Okay, he was one of the well-known philanthropists, belonged to this part of the world, and he has donated in 1950s itself 100 acres of land and 15 lakhs of rupees to establish institute like SICRI. Now, do you guys know, of course, who is this person, right? Do you know who is this person?
Yes, sir.
Who is this person?
Sir,
Sir C.V. Raman, yes. C.V. Raman, yes. So during the inaugural function, which happened basically on 14th January 1953, Sir C.V. Raman was there. Okay, he asked such a question: what are these laboratories going to do? Unless otherwise, the workers in this laboratory feel that it is up to them to do their very best. Otherwise, these laboratories will remain as a giant question mark in the sky. He was a well-known physicist, so he was looking at the sky, and that's why he posed such a question. Imagine you wanted to start let's say a school, and you invited someone as a chief guest, and during your inaugural function, the chief guest asked such a question: what you are going to do by starting a new school or something, how you guys would feel about it. The same way SICRIans felt during 1953, but I am sure if Raman would have been alive today, he would have been more than happy to see what SICRI has contributed both to the development of nation as a whole and to the development of electrochemical science and technology in particular. Okay, it's been about 7 decades since its establishment. SICRI has contributed in many areas, starting from fundamental concepts in electrochemical science and technology to the development of corrosion prevention coating given to Bomban Bridge, which is connecting the mainland with the island Rameswaram. Okay, so there are many sensor devices like ion selective electrodes, like pH sensing electrode, etc., were developed by SICRI. I can keep on adding the contribution SICRI has made over the past 7 decades, but just I would like to mention a point here that 7 decades of work, SICRI has contributed enormously both towards the electrochemical science and technology as well as to the growth of nation. Okay, the moment I say Raman, Okay, the moment I say Sir C.V. Raman, what does it strike you guys? What does it strike you? Meaning, what do you think of immediately when I say Raman? Any viewpoint? Anyone?
Sir,
The moment I say Raman,
science.
yeah.
Color of sky.
Color of sky, very good, very good. Then, very good. Anyone else?
Sir, one of our group in school.
One of your? Say again.
Sir, one of our groups in school. Sir, like Ashoka, Raman, Tagore.
Okay, okay. So, do you
Sir,
guys
the
celebrate
Raman effect
Science Day?
research.
Ah, very good. Yes,
Sir,
Raman
can I
research. Yes.
Sir, can I tell?
Yeah, please. Please,
Sir,
please.
he
What is your?
Sir, he gave the theory of light, spreading of light.
Okay, let me rephrase the sentence. Yes, very good. Now, do we celebrate Science Day? Do you guys celebrate Science Day in your school?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. When do you celebrate?
28th February.
When do you guys?
28th February.
28th.
28th February. Very good, very good. Why do you celebrate Science Day? Why do you celebrate Science Day?
In the discovery of Raman effect.
Of course, the answer is there in the slide. Yes, good. Yeah. So we do celebrate Science Day every year on 28th February in order to commemorate the discovery of Raman effect. You know what Raman has discovered. In fact, Raman revealed his discovery to public on 28th February 1928. That's why we do celebrate Science Day to commemorate his discovery. So what did he do? He basically discovers that even a very small changes occur when the frequency of light scattered by molecule, okay, are in a very practical terms, because of the vibrations, molecules are in random vibrations, because of the vibration associated with molecule, when light falls on such systems, it induces small change in its frequency, in its wavelength, and that's why it scatters light, and based on this concept, he has basically given reason for why sky is blue or sea is blue in color, etc. Not only this, scattering of light, Raman has contributed in many different areas. Okay, maybe that we will discuss
Sir,
during
what
the
is
discussion time.
spectrograph?
Now, the moment I say, Raman, the other point which should strike you guys is Nobel Prize. Okay, do you guys know about Nobel Prize? What Nobel Prize is all about? Do you guys have heard about Nobel Prize?
No, sir.
Yes, sir. We hear about now.
Yes, sir.
Sir, it started in
Yes. So few of you are saying
1901 and it was given at the name of Sir Alfred Bernard Nobel.
very good. Yes, very good. Yes. So the Nobel, how many different fields Nobel Prize is announced? What are the different fields Nobel Prizes are awarded usually? Do you guys know?
5. Rabindranath Tagore.
Sir, literature.
Yes, Rabindranath Tagore received. Very good. Let me tell you. Okay, Nobel Prize usually Nobel Prize is announced to 6 different fields: physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, economics, peace, and literature. Do you guys follow me? Physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, economics, peace, and literature. Among these 6 different fields, 5 usually during October 2nd week, the Nobel Prize winners will be announced and they will be invited to receive the award on December 10th or 11th. Okay, on December 10th or 11th in a place called Stockholm in Sweden. Except the Nobel Prize for Peace, the prize will be announced in a place called Oslo in Norway. Okay, the remaining 5 prize award ceremony will happen in a place called Stockholm in Sweden, and the Nobel Prize for Peace will be, the award ceremony will happen in a place called Oslo in Norway. Now, so such a Nobel Prize is a prestigious one would get in the field of science, I would say in general. This is the quartz spectrograph, what Raman has used to visualize the Raman effect. Okay, the original experiment Raman performed to observe Raman effect is simply through visual observation, and he revealed that theory behind the Raman effect, and he demonstrated Raman effect to public through a famous lecture in Bangalore on March 16, 1928. Okay, so he is Sir C.V. Raman demonstrating the Raman effect using a quartz spectrograph, what he has designed indigenously, and he is Raman's first student. His name is V. Krishnan. Okay, he is Raman's first student. Now, as some of you guys mentioned, yes, there are many Nobel Prize winners from India. Among them, Rabindranath Tagore was the first Indian to receive Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. And Sir C.V. Raman was the first scientist to receive Nobel Prize from India for physics in the year 1930. There are many other Nobel Prize winners, Nobel laureates, like Hargobind Khorana for medicine in 1968, Mother Teresa for peace in 1979, Chandrasekhar for physics in 1983, Amartya Sen for economics in 1998, and Venkatarama Ramakrishnan in chemistry for 2009, Kailash Satyarthi for peace in 2014, and Abhijit Banerjee for economics in 2019. Okay, so probably you guys should have guessed now that you would have heard about Kailash Satyarthi, Abhijit Banerjee, Ramakrishnan, etc. Right? Among these people, Sir C.V. Raman was the one and only scientist who received a Nobel Prize for the work he has done completely in India. I'm talking in the field of science. Okay, so he was working in a place called the Indian Association of Cultivation of Sciences in Calcutta, and that's where he discovered the Raman effect during 1928. Right. Of course, we have many other Nobel laureates. Most of them have worked abroad, and for the contribution they made towards their respective field, they received a Nobel Prize. Okay, and Mother Teresa is again a peculiar. Mother Teresa is again a peculiar case where she came to India and she was working towards the development of slum people in Kolkata. For that, she received the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1979. Right? So these are the Nobel Prize winners from India. Why I show this slide is because I want you guys to get motivated. It is not just science what we study in books, and you guys would feel that science is a kind of hard subject or something, right? But with constant dedication, one can achieve Nobel Prize when you consistently progress. Okay, so of course, as far as I am concerned, basically I am a chemist. I do take concepts from material science and biology to come up with sensors and devices mainly for energy and environmental applications and for biomedical device development. Okay, now how many of you guys have heard about scientists involved in doing research? Are you guys interested to become scientists in future?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So why people are very good?
Sir.
Yeah, I'm happy that you guys are really interested to take up science as a career and you would like to become scientist. Yes, there are plenty of options available. I can talk about that at the end of the lecture. Okay, now why do you think that people are involved in doing research? Essentially, why you want to do research? Any idea?
Because to get
What?
To space.
I think somebody's voice is breaking. Are there anyone else?
I think that
Sir, in the
things To study about global.
Sir, I think that when I would become scientist, sir,
Sir, in the field of space, to go out of our galaxy and discover other
Very
galaxies.
good. So when you guys listen to me, someone in your home is watching TV and some of your home is washing vessels. Correct. Okay. Now, so scientists are involved in doing research, essentially to provide solution to global problems. Okay, the global issues. If we look at this slide, here I have listed down the humanity's top 10 problems which we will face in the upcoming 50 years or so. Okay, energy, water, food, environment, poverty, terrorism, war, disease, education, democracy, population, etc. Okay, so each of this would result in a problem in the upcoming 50 years or so. I can provide examples for each of this, but let me start with energy. Okay, let's say about 2 decades ago, there are not many vehicles. Okay, if you take any house, they might have a landline telephone, okay, or a small solitaire television. I'm talking about a normal middle class Indian family. Okay, but now if you take even a single house in a village, they do have the following 3 items: one TV, second mobile phone, and third definitely a two-wheeler, or if possible a four-wheeler too, right? So how are you going to provide them energy? Let's say to charge your mobile phone, to charge your laptop. We have moved from classical blackboard based teaching to online virtual mode of teaching using Gmeet or Zoom or MS Teams, etc. So we need the energy as a source to provide power backup for all these devices, right? Apart from this, our government of India has already initiated that by 2030, all the vehicles in India on the road should be EV, electric vehicles, right? So how are we going to achieve those targets? Those targets could be
Sir, you are not audible.
Sir, your voice is stuck.
Yes, sir.
You are stuck.
Hello. Sir, your voice is not audible.
okay. Am I audible now? Looks like there is some small,
Yes, sir.
looks like
Yes,
there is
sir.
some small issue with the internet. Yes. So energy is going to be a very, very critical problem. Okay, I can provide examples like this. Since I am going to talk about energy from an unconventional source, as well as use that kind of source for disease diagnosis, I would provide example for disease too. Okay, about 2 decades ago, let's say when I was kid, if I get a fever or something, my father used to take me to a single doctor. Okay, the doctor would give me an injection or a small tonic or so that next day I would feel okay. I would take my bat and start playing cricket. No, but today if you go to a doctor, let's say for a small headache or so, what are the questions you have to face? Sir, did you check your blood pressure, or did you check your sugar level? Why don't we take an ECG and see how is your heart beats, etc. So and we do have many different diseases, starting from Nipah virus, starting from dengue virus, and now we have corona, etc. So keep on the diseases are coming up, meaning the microorganisms, virus, etc. changes its structure, depends upon the environment, so that it wants to survive. Do you follow me? So how do we provide solution to the such kind of problems? The only way to provide a solution to such problems is through research and through research. Okay. Now, apart from this, if we look at the human population across the globe, it was estimated to be 6 billion in the year 2012, and it was expected to grow roughly twice by 2050 or so. So how are you going to accommodate, all those people in global Earth, and to provide them, let's say, clean and good drinking water, healthy food, green energy, clean environment for them to live, etc. All these things are possible only through science and technology. Okay, and when we make a little bit step towards achieving a solution to these global issues, we would realize the dream of our honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, the self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that's where we need to sorry. So that's where we need to contribute even a little bit step towards achieving such kind of solution. We can stand on our own, we can stand on our own. We realize the dream of Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. So that's where we are at. Now, today what I'm going to talk to you about and share the knowledge is on energy harvesting. You guys would have heard about harvesting energy from sunlight and harvesting energy from renewable and non-renewable sources. But I am going to differ and give you a slightly a different concept. What it is known as energy from biological sources. Okay, let me ask you guys a series of questions. Okay. Do you guys play in your school? Of course, you are not going to school at present, I know. But do you play, let's say, football, volleyball, cricket? Right? Yes, yes, you guys do play. Now, what do you take during the break? What do you guys take?
Water.
Water.
Some water.
Water. Very good. What else you take? What else you take?
Glucose.
Glucose. Very good. Very good. And when I was giving a lecture like this, one student told me that, sir, we do take rest during the break. Of course, that is also true. Yes. When you have first half and second half, in between the break, you do take rest as well. Yes. But, mostly we guys take glucose during the break. Why do we take glucose?
Juice.
Juice, yes. Why do we take such kind of thing?
Sir, because glucose is the
Instant
because
energy.
glucose is simplest form of carbohydrate and it is easy to digest.
Yes, somebody said instant energy. Very good. The moment you take glucose, you would have seen advertisement that it gives instantaneously the energy. How does it work? When you take glucose through metabolism, glucose is consumed by our cells in body and undergoes, let me say in a very broad way, undergoes the biochemical reaction to give you energy. Let us look at deeply in the coming slide how does that thing work. Okay. Now, so understanding the chemistry bio interface. Okay. Understanding the chemistry bio problem, we can very well understand how our cells function in our body. And in order to do this, they actually require energy. And where do they get energy from? So what we are going to look at in the coming slide is precisely we will utilize such kind of concept to harvest energy from biological processes. Okay. Apart from this, you guys don't have to answer. Let me ask a series of questions. Just think about it. Okay. Let's say we all have good food, a good dinner in the night and go to bed. Okay. So you sleep and you sleep aram se. Now, who asked you to wake up in the morning? You don't have to answer. Just listen to me. Okay. Who asked you to wake up in the morning? Let's say your mobile phone alarm, your father, mother, your sister, brother disturbed and you get up. Okay. Let's say about 2 hours or so you get ready to go to school or college, and after getting ready you feel hungry, right? So who asked you to feel hungry? Let's assume you take good breakfast, and after the breakfast you go and catch a bus, or you go with your parents to school or college, and when you look at some of your friends, you feel very happy, and when you look at somebody else, you feel very much irritated, correct? And why does all these things happen? Why does all these things happen? Now you can say, any idea why all these things happen? Do you follow the story, right?
Sir, our brain thinks that.
Because of our brain cells. Okay, good. Any other viewpoint? Any other thought? Any other idea? Why all these things happen? You feel hungry, you get up on your own, and you express your emotions by laughing and expressing your anger, etc. All these things happen because of biochemical reaction which occurs in our body. Okay, this is a very broad way of looking at the system. Now, when I say biochemical reaction, some of the biomolecules like glucose, sucrose, or lactate, etc., they undergo metabolic reactions, and they undergo oxidation or reduction. Probably you guys would have studied about what oxidation is, what reduction is, right?
Our voice is breaking up.
Sir, sorry, my voice is breaking up. I think there is some slight internet connection, but how about others? Others are there? Are they able to hear me properly?
Fine.
It's audible.
Yes,
Sir.
Yes, yes. So probably that person can check your internet connection, or probably there would be some delay. Okay. So you guys should have studied about oxidation and reduction reaction, where molecules can gain oxygen or gain hydrogen and undergoes oxidation or reduction. Such kind of processes is called redox process that involves electron transfer reaction. Okay, so the electron is transported through the chain of our outer cell wall membrane, and that's where we induce such kind of biochemical reaction. So that's why understanding such chem-bio interface become very essential. When I talk about extracting energy from biological sources, what do I mean by that? Bioenergy is a kind of renewable energy which is made available from materials derived from biological sources. I'll talk about this, I will mention few examples during later part of my lecture. And biomass is a kind of organic material which has stored sunlight in the form of chemical energy. Okay, as a fuel, it can also include wood waste, straw, manure, sugar cane, and many other byproducts from a variety of agricultural processes, etc. Of course, I'm not going to talk about biomass today. Just to throw a few points, probably you guys would have heard about, given a country like India with mass population, with a very large population, and given our food habitat, we create lot of food waste, and such kind of biomasses could be collected together, and you can produce gas like biogas like methane, etc., that could be used for cooking or even for transporting vehicles or charging your batteries, etc. Such kind of biomass is another kind of energy derived from waste material, but I am not going to talk about that today. What I am going to talk about is extracting energy from biological sources. Okay, now probably you guys would have studied about photosynthesis. What it happens by using sunlight? The plant could use CO2, use carbon dioxide, and undergoes photosynthesis to produce energy for its survival. Now, once that is over, we can kind of do a recycling. It results in biomass, and that could be used to produce useful products, etc. And ultimately, the side product of such reaction would be CO2 that could be used again during photosynthesis. So that's where you can kind of create a circular economic pathway. Now, all the while during my lectures, I was talking about biological energy. What do I mean by that? When some of us talked about glucose, taking glucose, we get instantaneous energy. How do we get that? The energy in terms of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that undergoes reaction to give you a free phosphate molecule and adenosine diphosphate. Okay, If you look at the energetics behind such a reaction, you can determine what is called delta G, that is called Gibbs free energy. Okay, so probably at the higher levels you guys would have studied about this Gibbs free energy reaction that talks about whether the reaction is spontaneous or not. Okay, if the sign of delta G value is negative, the reaction is said to be spontaneous, and if the sign of delta G value is positive, the reaction is said to be non-spontaneous. Okay, so the glucose consumption reaction is negative. You know, delta G of that reaction is minus 46.2 kilojoules per mole. That's why the reaction is spontaneous. So the moment you consume glucose, the cells present in our body undergoes metabolic reaction to convert that into ADP, and that's where we get energy out of it. Okay, so do you guys follow me? Now, the idea of extrapolating such kind of biological energy harvesting is to mimic such kind of photosynthesis process directly on a panel like solar panels. Okay, I will talk about this in a bit later. Now, so that's the kind of introduction I wanted to give. What is the kind of energy we talk about from biological sources? Now, coupling such kind of biological energy with nanotechnology. What do I mean by nanotechnology? You guys have heard about such nanotechnology term before? Anyone? What do I mean by size of nano? Any idea? Nano? Probably if there are any 11th or 12th students or 10th student, they might know. Nano means what? What's the kind of value? Any idea?
The size of nano is 10 power minus 9 sir.
meter.
Oh, very good. 10 power minus 9
Meter.
So I can see probably some of the teachers are also there. I guess it's good so that you can convey the message. Okay, good. So nanotechnology essentially refers to manipulation of matter at an atomic or molecular scale. What do I mean by that? You would have studied about the atomic structure, like, you know, hydrogen atoms or a molecule which has only a very, very small size. If you go by definition, at least one dimension size of such kind of material varies between 1 and 100 nanometers. Where does the nanotechnology term evolved from? You know, where does it originated from? In 1959, Richard Feynman is a famous, I would say he was basically a psychologist come mathematician. So he has delivered a famous lecture titled "There is Plenty of Room at the Bottom," you know, and during the lecture he talked and used the term called nanotechnology to refer the ability to construct items from the bottom up, you know, atom by atom or molecule by molecule. That's where they come up with the concept of nanotechnology. It's a very, very tiny particle. As some of our friends mentioned, the size of such items varies from 1 to 100 nanometer, you know, 10 power minus 9 meters, which is that much smaller. Okay. Now, you can either do a bottom-up approach or a top-down approach. You know, you can have a bigger particle and go on chopping it off, go on reducing its size, so that you will ultimately end up with particles of very small nanometer dimensions. So why do I worry about such nanotechnology? Well, you are visualizing at present. It basically has the potential to change every part of our life, you know, and new materials are the foundation of major technological advances. So the IC chips, what we use, you know, the mobile phone, and we vary the, you know, what do we say, this memory card, you know, the memory you can store varies between, previously it was in megabytes, now it went up to gigabytes, 64 GB, and terabytes also. There are systems, you know, so that you can store more amount of data. How all these things are possible? All these things are possible. What is the revolution through nanotechnology. Okay, so this is the kind of size I'm talking about. The particles are very, very small and they are invisible. Okay, when I say invisible, let me ask a small question to you guys. Okay, what is the smallest object our eye can see? Human eye can see?
Atom.
Atom. Can we see an atom? What is
No,
the size of an atom? Very good. Can we see an atom with the naked eye? Huh?
No, sir.
No.
sir.
No, sir.
No. So what is the resolution? What is the resolution at which our eye can resolve?
No, sir.
Okay, let me ask this question. Let's say you guys are sitting in sofa and watching a TV or so. You know, when we sit in sofa in a very relaxed manner and watching a TV, our hands won't be ideal. You know, you will do this and do this. Let's say suddenly only one of your hair, human hair, falls down on the floor. Okay, so can our eye can see a single hair? Any idea?
Yes, sir.
So if we focus, we can see, sir.
Yes, we can see. What is the typical size of our human hair?
Typical size.
What is the typical? Any idea? Range would be also okay. Any range?
Microns, sir. 55 microns.
Oh, 55 microns. Okay, good, excellent. It varies between 75 to 100 microns. Yes, I was about to say that depends on shampoo you use or soap you use, the size of the hair varies. But okay, that's a good answer. It's in the range of micrometers, 10 power minus 6 meters. Okay, so our eye can resolve. Of course, I can go.
So what is
into
the
that.
smallest visible?
What is the smallest? Yeah, that's what I am coming to. Okay, so I can explain the scientific concept behind this. For example, it depends on the source of the wavelength of the source of light we use to visualize an object. You know, normally our human eye uses visible light that ranges between 400 nanometer to 800 nanometer in wavelength. So using that wavelength, our human eye can resolve the object. So our eye resolution is limited by the wavelength of the source of light we use to visualize an object. So we can see of the order of, let's say, micrometer level. But beyond which we cannot see very small objects like nanometer. That's where we use instruments like, microscopes to start with, and there are many advanced instruments as well. Now, my idea is you can take such nanotechnology concept and biomaterial and you couple them together. For example, you take a DNA, you take a protein, or you take an enzyme and you couple them with nanotechnology so that you take advantage of these two things to come up with materials and new and novel materials that could be used for harvesting energy. Now, so when I talk about energy, I restrict myself to, by going from chemical energy to electrical energy, converting chemical energy into electrical energy. That's where understanding the concept of electrochemistry becomes very, very essential. You know, electrochemistry is a branch of chemistry that deals with study of electron transfer reactions at interface. Okay, I do talk about getting up from the bed, feeling hungry, expressing emotion, etc. I also mentioned that all these things happen because of biochemical reactions which occur in our body, and I would go one step ahead and say that all those biochemical reactions occur because of electron transfer reactions which occur in our body. Okay, the study which deals with such kind of electron transfer reaction is nothing but your electrochemistry. Okay, so broadly, electrochemistry can deal with. Yes, sorry, any doubt?
Sir, can you tell me how many main branches of science are there?
Excellent. I can keep on dividing, but at school level, let me split only into 3 or maximum 4. Okay. Science could be divided like physics, chemistry, and biology. And biology could be subdivided into botany and zoology. And I would add maths also to this, though maths is a separate subject. But in order to understand all these concepts, we need mathematics as well. So I would say only 4: physics, chemistry, botany, zoology. Is it okay? At your level, school level, this is fine. Yeah. But when you grow up further, when you go to, let's say, college or a postgraduate degree, graduation, etc., you would see
So what
that.
is, sir,
Yeah,
what
you
is
would see
fourth?
that even these subjects are subdivided into many different branches. Yeah, someone else was asking something. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
No issue. Yeah, thanks. Okay, let us have the discussion at slightly later point. Okay. Now, electrochemistry essentially deals with 2 different kinds of reaction. The first one, in which voltage is applied to drive a chemical reaction, and the second one in which voltage is generated because of inbuilt chemical reaction. For example, let's say we do have wall clock in our home, etc. When the clock stops, what do? We simply change the battery and the clock start working, right? How does that happen? Because of inbuilt chemical reaction associated with the battery material, that results in a term called voltage. I will talk about that, and that could be used to drive the clock. Clock starts working. And the second aspect is, you guys should have heard in newspapers in recent time that water can be used as a fuel to drive vehicle. Can we really use water to drive vehicle?
Ethanol.
No, sir.
Salt water, sir.
It's not possible. Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, let us discuss at later point. Okay, there is a within. If you look at the chemistry behind the water splitting, water. What is the molecular formula of water? Anyone?
H2O.
H2O. Excellent. It has both hydrogen and oxygen.
H2O.
Yes. So when it splits, when water splits, it goes into hydrogen and oxygen, and both could be used as a fuel. Okay. And chemically, or I would say one step ahead and say that thermodynamically, this process is not allowed process. But by applying a small voltage, applying a small potential of 1.23 volt, water could be split into hydrogen and oxygen, and both could be used as a fuel. I deliberately took this from Google, this image. Probably you guys would have heard about at slightly higher class level, maybe 9th or 10th. Let's say we do have an orange fruit or lemon, etc. You prick the fruit with 2 conducting rod. It could be copper or carbon rod, etc. And when you connect these 2 rods into a meter or a meter, you can measure the potential value. Do you follow me? And that is a kind of typical electrochemical cell one would establish. The moment you dip a conducting rod into a solution, when I say solution, that contains a chemical salt or acid or base, etc. At the solid liquid interface, we call that in electrochemistry that as electrode-electrolyte interface. There is a typical formation of double layer. 2 charged layers would form at the interface of solid liquid. And that probably 11th or 12th standard people would know. The separation of layer of charges at interface leads to a parameter called capacitance, and capacitance results in the term called potential through an equation C is equal to Q by E. Okay, and that's where the potential originates in electrochemistry. Now, why do we have to worry about energy? Of course, I talked about the global issues in the beginning, and we do know that the energy sources are, the oil fields and fossil fuels what we use basically are getting depleted. For example, here I show a photo of Kuwait's Al Burgan oil field, and this is the world's 2nd largest oil field, and that is depleted. It's a prediction that is going to be depleted within 40 years or so. And when we use fossil fuels, mostly the sources like coal, oil, gas, etc., that results in mostly global warming gases like CO2, greenhouse gas emission, etc. So we pollute environment to certain extent. And India has signed the Paris Treaty, Paris Agreement Climate Change Deal in 2016. So probably you would have read in the newspapers that we are working towards the reduction of CO2 level. So meaning we need to find an alternative to our fossil fuels. That's where the concept of electric vehicle comes into picture. The concept of battery operated vehicles comes into picture in order to have a green environment. Okay, so so we do know that there is an energy crisis. So how do you provide solution to such kind of energy crisis? We need to come up with what is called a balance sheet. What do I mean by balance sheet? What are the energy sources available, and what are the ways through which you can extract or harvest energy, and what is the energy at present we use? Such kind of balance sheet one can arrive at. And how do you come up with this? You need to basically have a common unit, let's say a joule to start with, which is a basic unit for energy, right? Joules. And you convert all these things into joule, creates energy transparency among our population. And you need to eradicate energy illiteracy. What do I mean by energy illiteracy? When you go out of room, when nobody is around, you can switch off your light or fan, etc. Or when you go out to play or something, you can switch off your TV, you can switch off your AC, etc. So that's the kind of energy illiteracy we need to eradicate. And of course, we all know that the sunlight can, in principle, provide a very high amount of energy. And there are solar panels people use. Probably you guys have heard about silicon solar panels, photovoltaic panels they use. And there are many products that has already come out in the market. For example, solar bicycle, solar auto, etc. That uses directly the sunlight to harvest energy and convert that into energy that could be used to drive bicycle, or that could be used to drive auto, etc. Now, there are many fancy items based on such solar cell concept, and this is the basic science behind it. Maybe I will skip for time being now. Just I will highlight the important aspect. Okay, so you can have a solar handbag. When you travel, you can very well look at your handbag or purse and look at the TV ongoing serials, ongoing matches or movie songs, etc. Now, not only that, there are already products which are available in the market like solar hat that can provide you, a fan attached to a solar panel, or solar t-shirts, shirts, etc. So that's the kind of energy extraction from sunlight. Nowadays, the idea is to use solar panels instead of using geyser to get a hot water, and also to provide electricity to house. How do we maximize the efficiency of such solar panel? So what we have to do is we need to have a solar panel that can also move and trace the path of sun. Do you follow me? The sun when moves in the solar system, if your solar panels also rotates and moves as per the direction of the sun, you can maximize the solar energy absorption. You can maximize the amount of energy captured by the solar system if it traces the elliptical path of the sun, so that the solar panel is always perpendicular to that of the direction of the sun. So that's the kind of idea now people are projecting to maximize the outcome. Now, another kind of energy conversion device is fuel cell. So what do we do is, we do have an anode and we do have a cathode, and you dip these electrodes, anode and cathode, into an electrolyte, the chemical solution, and you can apply a small voltage through an output. So what you can do is hydrogen
Sir, you are not audible.
Now I am audible, right? Yes.
Yes,
That's-
sir.
Yes. There is some problem with the internet. It goes on and off. Now, in case of fuel cells, you can combine hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen could be bubbled at anode. Oxygen could be bubbled at cathode. So, hydrogen undergoes oxidation at anode to give you proton and electron. And the proton passes through a membrane. What I showed in the previous slide, this is a kind of membrane. Okay. The proton passes through a membrane, reaches cathode. Meanwhile, electrons flow through the external circuit. Okay, that's where you can apply a load and extract voltage output. And at cathode, oxygen reduced at cathode to give you water. So this is a typical fuel cell reaction. And this is the basic principle through which a fuel cell operates. Okay. So hydrogen undergoes oxidation at anode, oxygen undergoes reduction at cathode. That's where you get a fuel cell concept. Of course, depending upon the fuel you use, there are many different kinds of fuel cell which are available in the market. Even since most of the fuel cell based concepts are at a research state, there are already few fuel cell run buses in London, for example, and in Mexico, and they also fill up hydrogen instead of our regular petrol, etc., to drive vehicle. Now, the concept I am interested to project today is based on microbial fuel cell. What do I mean by microbial fuel cell? Let's say your mother cooks good food in the morning, but you don't like it. So what do? You basically ask your brother or sister to eat, right? What do you do if you don't like food? What do? You simply throw it in the dustbin. There is internet connection which goes on and off. Okay. So if you don't like the food, what do? You simply throw the food in the dustbin, right? So when you go and look at the dustbin again after, let's say 2 days or 3 days, there are microbes which probably the fungi or algae would have already grown on the food samples. Okay, so precisely we mimic such concept in the case of microbial fuel cell. So what do? In case of anode, we allow the microbe to grow on the electrode surface so that it forms a microbial film on the electrode surface, and it consumes all the food waste and undergoes oxidation. When I say oxidation, it loses electron, and those electrons are supplied through a load, and the excess electrons reaches cathode, and that's where the reduction process occurs. So we come up with many different microbial fuel cell assemblies. One such assembly is based on a microbe called Acidobacter aceti, and that basically consumes alcohol and gives out carbon dioxide. And if you look at this graph, okay, so when I dip a, let's say, carbon paper or a graphite rod into that food waste solution, initially there is no microbial growth, and you allow for some time, there is a microbial growth which occurs on the electrode surface, and after that, if you add a fuel, the current value shoots up. What does it tell me? The fuel like ethanol or sugar or carbohydrate, etc., the microbes consume and produces a current value through metabolic process, and that current is stable for about, let's say, about 150 hours or so, and after that the current drops down. That could be because of two reasons. One, either the microbe is dead or it needs more fuel. Okay. So I can tell you that if you add more fuel like ethanol, the current comes back to this value. So that suggests that the microbe is alive, only we need sufficient fuel for the microbe to survive. Now, this is a typical example of a single cell microbial fuel cell assembly. We have an anode and we have a cathode. and you connect it in series like 2 cells or 3 cells, you can maximize the voltage output. A single cell would deliver about 0.6 to 0.8 volt. So when you connect them in series, you get roughly about 1.2 to 1.6 volt. That is sufficient enough to drive a wall clock or a small calculator or digital calculators, etc. If you look at the graph behind such kind of microbial fuel cell assembly, 10 microwatt is sufficient enough. You can see the voltage is roughly about 1.4 volt. Okay, and 10 microwatt is sufficient enough to drive a wall clock. Now, not only the kitchen or food waste, you can also use, let's say, bad wine or alcohol based drinks, etc. because during the fermentation process it produces more amount of alcohol, and that's where we can extract energy from. Now please keep it in mind, I'm not talking about extracting energy in the order of running a 240 220 volt system. What I am trying to project here is by using a biological sources, we can extract a very small amount of energy which is sufficient enough to use for, let's say, a sensing or a pacemaker or a glucometer, etc. That's the kind of voltage and power output I am talking about. These are all some of the microbial fuel cell assemblies what we developed in our lab. Okay. Now, using this, you can come up with many kind of systems like EcoBot. I will tell you what is that. For example, you can run a toy car with this microbial fuel cell system. So instead of battery, you can assemble cells like this. You can assemble cells like this. You can connect them in series. That is sufficient enough to run a small toy car. So there is a train called Choo Choo that has been demonstrated using microbial fuel cell. We can also have a robotic movement using such kind of smaller cell that is called a slug boat. Suppose if you throw a paper or a lot of dust is around there in your floor, you can use such kind of slug boat. Instead of using a battery, we can use such kind of waste itself to create a small power output or a voltage output that could be used for doing such operation called a slug boat. Slightly an advanced version of this could be used as a signal warning system in marine applications. Okay, it has been demonstrated in UK that such microbial fuel cells could be used as a signal warning system in marine. Now, the other aspect I would like to highlight here is, we sweat during summer. Okay, a scientific term for sweating is called perspiration. And sweat is an interesting concept. There are two occasions one person would sweat. Okay, in temperature difference, for example, if it is summer, you sweat more. Okay, and during emotional changes. What do I mean by that? Let's say you students are sitting in the school. Suddenly your teacher comes and says that today I'm going to have a very surprise test. So suddenly some of you feel tensed, and some of you guys would start sweating. Or suppose if someone says you have to go and attend an interview, or you need to deliver a lecture, etc. So those kind of emotional changes would also bring in the perspiration. That is called sweating. But scientifically, if you look at it, sweat could be used as a fuel to generate small amount of energy. It has many constituents like glucose, lactate, urea, etc. So by using enzymes, okay, probably I don't know whether you guys have heard about enzymes. Enzymes are specific in nature. It comprises of proteins and amino acids, and using enzymatic reaction, one can basically get the energy out of it. So instead of microbial fuel cell, one can use enzymatic fuel cell to extract energy. That's the concept I was trying to highlight using perspiration as an example or sweating as an example. How about this? You have insects, and suppose you prick your insects with a conducting rod, let's say a small copper rod or a carbon rod, etc. So by doing this, you take a 2 lead and connect it to a voltmeter or something, you would get a voltage output. You know, the body fluid of such insects, it's like cockroach, or the other one is snail. You can establish an electrochemical cell, and you can get an energy of very, very small values of 0.6, 0.8 volt, or the power of the order of microwatt to milliwatt. Okay, that is sufficient enough to have a, let's say, spy camera, for example. That is sufficient enough to operate such kind of system. Okay, so of course in SICRI we do have such kind of fuel cell assemblies in SICRI, and the one of the interesting concept, probably with another 5 minutes or so I will wind up. Okay, one of the interesting concept is, of course in India we don't have the concept of having tattoo. Now the generation is changing. Okay, so they may like to have a tattoos to show off, and most of the Hindi films, probably you guys would always see that heroes having tattoos. Okay, so you can use such kind of pattern, like in tattoos, and use them to analyze sweat. That comes as a healthcare diagnostic too. Okay, you can basically predict whether a person is healthy or not. You can analyze instead of blood, sweat itself. And how do we do that? We can have an array of electrodes. Okay, array of electrodes printed onto your fabric or a tattoo kind of pattern, etc. So that when sweat comes into contact, you can use such kind of enzymes and analyze the constituents present in the sweat, so that you can use enzymatic fuel cell concept to create a very small power output to light an LED or a small lamp, etc. So that is the concept I would like to project. So why this is useful? Well, in a single platform itself, you can have many different kind of electrodes, and by doing such kind of analysis, you can basically predict how much exercise one can perform in a single day, whether your pulse rate or pressure or heart rate, etc. is normal, etc. And the same could be extrapolated to smart defense and sports arena. Probably you guys should have heard about Olympics in recent time. So how many gold medals India got in Olympic?
7.
Anyone?
7.
7.
7.
7 is the total number, right? How many gold medals we got?
7.
1 gold
One
medal.
gold. Very good. Very good. How many silver?
2.
2. Very good. Then we got 4 bronze, right? So let's say probably you guys should have heard about in the previous Olympics, there are many discrepancies. People have taken drugs, people have taken I would say illegal substances, so that they can perform much better in the Olympics and win medal. How do you monitor them? So what currently they do is they collect your either blood or urine sample, and just before, let's say, start of a race and after the end of the race, and they try to match whether your parameters are normal, or the adrenaline level or biomarker, I would say, whether it is normal or abnormal. Based on that, they will say that basically a person has taken illegal substance or a drug, etc. Now, normally such kind of analysis take years, and they will give a gold medal at this moment, and after 2 years or 3 years they say that person has taken a drug, etc., which is not a good way of doing it. So how can we improve such kind of system? While the person running itself, let's say while the person participating in the event itself, we can monitor a kind of biocomputing process we can use, and while he or she runs itself, we can able to monitor whether her biomarkers or adrenaline levels are normal. Definitely they will wear fabric, they will wear dress, so you can impregnate such kind of array of electrodes, what I showed earlier, like this. You can impregnate such kind of things on the fabric, I showed such kind of things because that cloth material has direct contact with our body. So the moment you start exercising or the moment you start running, you start sweating, and from the sweat we can analyze whether the person is okay or not. So that's the kind of application, and for that you need a very small power output. And in order to provide power to such kind of sensors, we can use the concept what I highlighted, energy from biological sources like microbial fuel cell, enzymatic fuel cells, etc. So probably to conclude, I would say electrochemistry is, chemistry is in fact a rather science, is a very fascinating subject. And by taking concepts from different areas, and we do adopt a multidisciplinary approach to come up with, sensors, devices, fuel cells, energy harvesting process, etc. Ultimately, to come up with smart materials and smart sensing. What do I mean by smart material? Okay, so let's say you guys are sitting in sofa and aram say listening to me, and after lunch it is very difficult to listen to a talk like, scientific concept. So you lean towards, in the chair, and the chair understands that you are not interested in listening to me. So it converts into a sofa so that you can sleep aram say. Okay, but that is a kind of smart material we talk about. Now you would have heard about, building materials. Suppose if it cracks, you can apply a paint so that the crack will heal by itself. That's the kind of smart coating, we talk about. And smart sensing is like this, let's say in the morning you want to drive a two-wheeler. The moment you touch the accelerator, based on the sweat released from your hand, the speedometer will display, "Hi Ganesh, good morning. Today your blood pressure level is this, your glucose level is this, you are normal and you are allowed to drive." Such kind of sensing is called a smart sensing concept. So we do develop all these things to lead a slightly advanced and healthy life, and live with smart materials and smart sensing system. How do we achieve those targets? Those could be achieved only through multidisciplinary group effort. Okay, probably through science and technology, probably through extensive research and development of advanced materials, etc. That could be extended to providing solutions to the global issues, what I discussed in the beginning of my lecture. Okay, so finally, I would once again like to thank you all for your patience listening. I would like to thank once again Angappan sir and our director for providing me an opportunity to share my knowledge with you guys and to pass on a few scientific concepts. Okay, so thank you very much, and I would be happy to answer any questions or queries, and we can have a discussion. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hi, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
For
Do you guys?
full session.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you,
you guys?
sir.
Yeah. Any questions? Any doubts? Anything you want to ask?
Sir, good afternoon. My name is Anupama. I am
Yeah.
PGT Biology in Kendriya Vidyalaya number 2, Jalali. Sir, I have gone through your slides and your presentation and got a lot of information. Thank you so much. What I would like to know is, what is the stage, sir? Like, what is the stage of development of all these technology? Like, is it still in the research mode or has it come to market already?
Yeah. So in case of fuel cells, what I showed earlier, there are fuel cell operated vehicles have been demonstrated. Even in India, there are buses that is run by fuel cells. Okay. But the concept of extracting energy from biology, what I talk about, is still at research state. And there are devices which are available in market. For example, pacemaker. Okay, so this is being operated by battery at present, but we can extend the concept of using the enzymatic fuel cell and extracting a small amount of energy from sweat, etc. So that you can use that power to operate the pacemaker. So I would say that the extracting energy from biological sources, it's still at research state, And I would like to, throw upon that idea so that when you guys as a student, you grow up, you will have the capability and knowledge to build up this further. So that's the new concept I would like to throw in. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Sir, you tell us the 4 types of science branches. Sir, what is the
Yes.
fourth?
The fourth one I split, biology into botany and zoology at school level. So physics, chemistry, biology. I split biology into botany and zoology. That's why I said kind of 4.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure, man, sure. Of course,
There
when you
is
guys
geology also there.
geology. Sorry, say again. So probably, of course, when you guys grow up, you would see that there are many things that are still subdivided. Like nanotechnology, for example, materials, for example, and biomedical science, for example, like it keeps on splitting. So don't worry about it. Have your fundamental strong and build up your career. Okay, I would suggest that you guys should take up science as your career and pursue in that field. There are plenty of opportunity. That will you will enjoy by doing it a small experiment. Even I remember the microbial fuel cells what I talked about. There are you can do a small experiment in your home itself. You take juices, fruit juices, and allow that to just leave it for about 2 days. You just keep a graphite rod or 2 copper rod, etc., and you connect to an ammeter. You measure the voltage change with respect to time, and you would see that maybe 1 day, 2nd day, 3rd day, etc., there is a microbial film which grows on the graphite rod. When I say graphite rod, it is nothing but the pencil, the graphite rod. When you keep on removing the outer skin of the pencil, you would end up with a black graphite rod, right? So even that you can dip in the fruit juice, you can able to develop a small voltage output. And that is the concept I projected when we discuss about electrochemistry. Yes, I see that Anita Jain has raised the hand. Yeah, please, Anita, you can go ahead. Yeah, ask me. You want to ask?
She's already asking, I think so.
Okay.
As teacher, I think so. Biology teacher.
Oh, okay.
So from the thank you, Dr. V. Ganesh. You are elaborate and interesting and deliberately very interactive sessions had. Participants, you are enjoyed, I think so. A few of the registered participants are asking a few questions. Sir, one by one I can asking, you can please answer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Lakshay Dheer from Kendra Vidyalaya, Chennai.
Okay.
He is asking what type of energy do we receive from the unconventional sources and how will store them?
Very good. Yes. So when you talk about unconventional sources, that's where I highlighted, the concept of sweat, the concept of biological sources to harvest energy from. These are the unconventional sources that deviates from the normal, energy sources like coal, gas, oil, even nuclear energy extraction, etc. Okay. So deviating from the conventional, this is a kind of very unconventional sources. And to store energy, we have 2 different kinds of system to store energy. One is a battery and the other one is supercapacitor. So even probably you would have heard about the UPS batteries in your house. So you generate such kind of voltage output, but ultimately you can store them using a battery only. So 90% of the energy is stored using a device called battery, and a slightly advanced level of energy storage system is called a supercapacitor. So these are the 2 devices you can use to store energy extracted from such unconventional sources. I hope I answered the question.
Well attended. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next question, Rohit Kumar Singh Rathore, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya.
Yes.
As a teacher, he is asking how energy harvesting from unconventional sources will be cost effective.
Ah, good question. Yes. So if you look at cost wise, still I mentioned that during my lecture. Yes, one madam has asked, this is still at research stage only. So when you talk about such kind of energy harvesting from unconventional sources, in the research stage, always you would like to explore different possibilities. So you would not worry about the cost at that moment. But when you want to develop into a product or a device into the market, so we need to identify a system that could be very much efficient, at the same time cost effective. So we can work out the cost effective modalities only through constant research. Okay. So at present, I would say the cost effectiveness is slightly at a higher cost, but during the course of time, it can be reduced further. Yes.
Thank you, sir. The next question, Ujjwal from 7th standard, Telangana State School. He is asking energy from vibration of industrial machines need to be explored.
Energy from vibration of
industrial machines.
Yes, very good. Yes, that is also an unconventional source. That's why I mentioned in the beginning of my lecture, I restrict myself by conversion of energy from chemical energy into electrical energy. The vibration comes under the mechanical kind of energy, not only a vibration, which is a very, very good idea. So the vibration is one aspect. You can also jump, by jumping also you can create energy. Mechanical movement, etc. can also create energy. So such kind of energy conversion comes under the category of converting mechanical energy into electrical energy. Dynamo, for example, probably you guys don't use dynamos now. When we were kids, we drive vehicle, cycle, two-wheeler. So you need to pedal it up. When you pedal, we attach a dynamo. So by pedaling, you convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. So yes, to answer your question, that also comes under unconventional energy sources. But the broad category is from converting mechanical energy into electrical energy. We need to explore that as well. Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next question, Suman Kumar from PGT Chemistry, KVAF, Southwest Delhi. He is asking what is the efficiency and feasibility of such energy sources? Yes.
So the efficiency wise, yes, we can maximize the efficiency by playing with the biological components and the chemistry background. The efficiency, I would say at present is even at 90% in case of sweat or in case of microbial fuel cells, etc. What was the other parameter, sir? The one is the efficiency and the other one is
feasibility.
Feasibility. Yes, it is feasible. That's where we demonstrated through the slides I showed you. Yes, it is completely feasible, and people are now working on product development, device development to show a real-time application for such kind of concept. Yes, so I would say that yes, it is feasible and efficient at this moment.
Thank you, sir. Next question from Mohammad Ajmi, King Saudi University, Riyadh.
Okay.
He is asking how much energy we will need. How much energy will need to produce the energy harvesting from the unconventional sources? That means the net energy he is asking.
Yes, absolutely. So that's why in the energy crisis slide, I talked about balance sheet. At this moment, in case of let's say microbial fuel cell and all, you don't have to apply external bias to generate voltage output. You simply dip the electrode into a fruit juice or a kitchen waste, etc. Only with the time we get energy output, like in terms of voltage or a power output. So it depends on the system we use. So in case of microbial fuel cell, the net energy is positive. You can work out the thermodynamics behind that. So the net energy is positive. But in case of energy harvesting from sweat, etc., we need to still work out the energy efficiency process. So I would say it depends on the system. But yes, currently in case of MFC, it is net energy is positive. Yes.
Thank you. Well attended, sir. Next question, Kida Sharma from Kendra Vidyalaya, Kantua. She is asking, how do we harvest energy from polythene?
Energy from?
Polythene material.
Polythene material, okay. So those things, that comes under a biomass kind of category. We need to basically either, convert that into a completely a biomass category. Okay, it doesn't come under kind of a energy source as what we discussed today. Yeah.
And Narendra Dio is asking, can we produce energy from wastewater?
Yes, that's the concept I projected. We can produce energy from wastewater. When I say wastewater, it could be from industrial wastewater like sugarcane or biscuit industries, or even wastewater from kitchen waste, or our fecal waste, etc. We can produce energy. But when I say we can produce energy, it is not like you produce in terms of megawatts or gigawatts. The energy is very, very small amount you can produce. Please keep it in mind. The biological organisms are not like energy producing agent. We try to extract their metabolic pathway to produce a small amount of energy during the course of the reaction. Yes. So to answer your question straightforward, yes, wastewater could also be used to generate energy out of it.
Thank you, sir. Next, Sumadi, Principal KV Mandapam Camp.
Okay.
She is asking how to store solar energy at industrial level.
See, I talked about the storing of energy. Only two devices are currently available to store energy. One is a battery and the other one is supercapacitor. There are some advantages and limitations with these two devices. But if you look at the current market trend, battery is the main source of energy storage device. So even at industrial level or even at institute like SICRI, etc., we do use solar panel to harvest energy and store them ultimately in the battery only. So the energy storage device is still battery. Yeah. So that's the main source we can store energy with.
Next question, Richa Srivatsava, Kendra Vidyalaya, Pusha, New Delhi. She is asking how two terminals could be developed to find potential difference. Basic question she is asking.
Okay. That is a good question. Yeah, in fact, I talked about electrochemistry in the middle, a very, very small concept. So when you dip a conducting rod into an electrolyte, okay, into a solution containing a compound or chemical, etc., the moment you dip at the solid liquid interface, okay, in electrochemistry, we term that as electrolyte interface. There is a spontaneous formation of electrical double layer. What do I mean by electrical double layer is there is a separation of layer of charges at interface. Okay, let's say in the solid part you have a positive charge and in the solution part we do have a negative charge. So this charge separation leads to a parameter called capacitance. Probably you guys would have studied about parallel plate capacitor model in school. So that develop a parameter called capacitance, and because of that, through an equation, C is equal to Q by V. Q is charge stored at this interface, and C is capacitance. Based on these two parameters, the potential develops. Okay, and please keep it in mind. It is not possible to measure potential of this single electrode. We need to have another electrode And that's where we measure a potential difference between these two interfaces. So in order to measure such kind of potential differences, you need a minimum of 2 electrodes. You know, it is like, you know, comparing who is beautiful. It is Aishwarya Rai or, you know, Susmita Sen or, you know, somebody else, etc. How do we term them? It's like keeping a reference. So that's where, suppose if I am a good batsman, how do I say that I am a good batsman? By comparing with either, you know, Sachin, Dhoni or Virat Kohli for that matter. So we keep those people as a reference. So that's where we need to use another electrode to measure the potential difference. I hope you understand the concept of measuring the potential by using two terminals. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for well attended all these questions. Participants, you can any questions or clarification you can ask. Participants,
Okay.
you can unmute yourself and ask your questions, if any.
Yeah.
So there are no more questions. I thank you, Dr. V. Ganesh, for wonderful and interactive sessions. The hope the participants will enjoy. Thank you for all the participants, and thank you once again, Dr. V. Ganesh. Participants,
Okay.
please subscribe our CSR Sigyasa YouTube channel and give your feedback for this lecture also. Thank you, one and all. We will meet on next 26th, the same day.
Thank
2
you.
p.m.
Thank you, sir.
on
Thank you
Thursday.
very much. Thanks for the
Thank
opportunity. I thank all the participants also. Thank you. Bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.